England. The date, 1844, 100 years ago. The Houses of Parliament, still under construction, rise lofty above the Thames embankment. Yet within sight and sound of so fair an exterior lies the spiritual poverty of dockside tavern and age-scarred tenement. Here in the heart of London lived 22-year-old George Williams, a farm boy from Somerset. Appalled by the vice and immorality he saw everywhere about him, Williams decided to act. He organized a group of 12 young dry goods clerks who felt much as he did. And on June 6, 1844, he called them to a special meeting. In great earnest and with prayer, they founded a society for the improvement of the spiritual condition of all young men engaged in London trades. They decided to call this organization the Young Men's Christian Association. The new movement spread rapidly. Young men in other English industrial centers began to form Christian associations of their own. The work expanded into Europe. And in 1855, the first World's Conference was held in Paris. As early as 1851, the association had crossed the Atlantic and was established first in Montreal and Boston. By the end of 3 decades, it had covered the United States and Canada. Further still, it spread as dynamic leaders from both North America and Europe founded vigorous associations throughout the entire world. Till at last, by 1944, the red triangle symbolizing body, mind, and spirit had become, next to the cross and crescent, the world's most widely used religious emblem. Main Street, USA. In 1851, it was 1 room and a Bible class. Today, in town and city, great and small, the Y in America includes 1,300 separate associations, nearly 3 million members all told, men and boys. And what do they think of their associations? Well, why not let one of them speak for all?
You know, the Y's just about all things to all people. But when you come to work in a strange town and you haven't got a friend, you first get to think of the Y as a sort of home away from home. Maybe somebody on the bus has given you a friendly steer, so you start down the street looking for it. The Y? Sure he knows. Just keep straight on ahead. And there it is. You're a little shy, maybe, but you walk on up the steps anyway, and you're hoping pretty hard they've got a room for you. So you go on up to the desk and ask. And they have got a room. Then a friendly sort of guy introduces himself, and he turns out to be the Y secretary. And right off, he makes you feel you belong here. Then he steers you upstairs to take a look at your room. It's a nice one, too. And you start thinking, I'm going to like it here. Soon as everything's all shipshape, the secretary takes you in tow again. Right off, you start meeting new friends. By the time you get downstairs again and find your locker, you realize you're in a pretty good-sized place. Gosh, they've got a swell swimming pool, and you can get lessons from a real pro. But it's late in the afternoon now, and you've got a lot to tell the family. It's all about your finding a home away from home.
Besides a room to sleep in, the new Y member can get wholesome food and plenty of it. No sitting off in a corner by yourself either. Rest, food, and exercise. For the everyday physical needs of life, just step in at the Y on Main Street, USA. Basketball, the most popular indoor sport in the world, invented by James Naismith, a Y secretary in the year 1891. In those days, the baskets were baskets, peach baskets. Hundreds of thousands have learned to swim in the 600 pools now operated by the association. I did myself. And many American fighting men today owe their lives to swimming lessons once received at a YMCA. Yes, getting ready for more fun. Boy and girl together help with decorations for a party. And the boy and girl together step through the paper heart as their shindig begins. The big reason why so many young people go to the Y is they have a good time there. And so all over the country, they open their doors regularly to girls, too, for dances, co-ed swims, and a dozen other special events. You'll see teenage kids, older boys in the armed forces, and even mother and dad sometimes. The whole family's welcome, and the whole family comes to share in the fun. There's a bar at this party, too, for soft drinks, a Coke bar. And you see that young man? Well, you'll see him here, too, in this board of directors meeting. There's a lot of fun goes on at the Y, but somebody's got to work pretty hard to arrange for it all. Now you take our friend of the Coke bar. He's telling them about plans for this summer at the local Y camp. So kids like these can spend fine, healthy summers out of doors. What are they doing now? Well, these youngsters are celebrating the mystic candle service of their induction into a Gray Y club. Gravely, they perform the rites. They didn't come here to have their characters formed, but that's what is happening. Let the directors meet all they want, just so long as the kids hold their powwows about camp, too. With camp due to open almost any day now, boys of this international club who attended last year drum up interest among prospective newcomers. Their leader sets up a screen. The lights are dimmed, and the story of a perfect summer begins to unwind.
There we are. That's Billy Johnson got the tiller. You ever sailed? Boy, you'll love it. See that? That's a race. Sure, sailing race at camp every week. Gee, I can feel that water right now. You can go swimming twice a day. Even more than that if you want to, I guess. And if you don't know how to swim, we teach you. Sure, that's easy. And then comes chow. You're so darn hungry you could eat a tadpole. Look at old Sam there, trying to bounce a meatball. That's when it's time to get your mail, when you run like that. And then you have a little time all to yourself to read your letter from home. Or maybe you wash dishes. Oh, sure, there's lots of work to be done. Gotta keep things clean and neat at camp. We got a wonderful victory garden, too. Say, you ever pick beans? No? You will. You see that funny-looking guy in his birthday suit? It's me. What are we doing? Getting ready for the sacred Indian fire ceremony. And in sports, every guy gets to be on a team. And on Sunday, every guy goes to chapel. That's a bunch of our leaders. They're listening to Chief, our camp director, and he's telling them how to keep us quiet at night. You sure got a treat in store this summer, going to our camp.
In the city as well as at camp, the instruction and training of leaders is a daily activity, for the Y knows that its entire program depends now and will depend largely on its ability to develop the qualities of true leadership in those of its young men who must carry the movement forward. Here a Y secretary instructs a group of men who are about to receive their first experience as club leaders for younger boys, grade school kids of the Gray Y. At George Williams College in Chicago and Springfield College in Massachusetts, the Y has developed two splendid schools where secretaries themselves are trained. Graduate secretaries meet their fellow secretaries at the YWCA. Business at hand, to work out plans for one of their many joint services. Young men and women of the same community, planning and working together to make that community a better place in which to live. Public affairs forums have been developed by the Y throughout America in a common effort to build better citizenship through greater knowledge. Sunday morning in spring, and young men leave the Y to commune in the greatest fellowship of all. Here, men far from home find open the friendly doors of the church and meet with the same warm friendliness and hospitality which they knew back home. Dinner with us? Thank you, ma'am. So they sit down with a real family to a real Sunday dinner, and they are strangers here no longer, but friends.
There's every reason why we should be friendly to those young men at the Y. Just think of all they do for us. Now you take their work with our boys. Soon as school's over, the kids meet their Gray Y club leader. And as long as he's with them, we mothers don't have a worry. Some days they ride over to one of the boys' houses for a club meeting inside. Yes, and I like the way the leader and his boys open the meeting with prayer. Then the secretary reads the minutes of their last meeting, and the boys get down to business. Of course, I must say, it always seems as if one of the most important parts of that business is eating. It's all right, I won't say a word. Then you take some of their other work, especially what the older boys are doing. Why, I know where they've spent more hours than you can count, working to make those paper disposal bags for the hospital. And there was that day last week, too, when they went all over town to collect musical instruments. Going to send those instruments down to the center where the Y will ship them overseas to prisoners of war. Every day, in a dozen different ways, little and big, these Y boys are helping their country. Real Americans they are, and the hope of us all.
These high school boys call their clubs High Y. There are 7,000 of these clubs, 7,000 examples of democracy in action. In the classroom of their high school, an election takes place. Delegates are being chosen to represent the group at a youth assembly. Here in a state capital, the young people themselves take over for a day the actual responsibilities of government. Now it's time for work. But next day, it's time for play. A group of high Y boys enjoy a ski outing in the mountains. It's high, wide, and handsome way up here, with plenty of fun for expert and scissor bill alike. The American Y has always taken special interest in the welfare of young men at college. Today, its student branches work closely with youth and universities from coast to coast. College Y secretaries lend a willing ear to students' personal problems of all sorts, advising, guiding, giving help where help is needed. And for those who would find constant renewal of their faith in the worship of God, the Young Men's Christian Association conducts frequent religious services.
My name's Frank Parker, and that's my city, you see. Not so long ago, I was working as a draftsman in this factory. I never got the chance to go to college myself, but the Y had an answer for me, too. The manager knew I wanted to get along in the world, and he was the one who told me about it. He said, "There's a Y industrial college in the city. Why don't you drop by and see what they have to offer?" I did that same day. I found they had plenty to offer. And right then and there, I signed up for an engineering course. There are scores of Y schools and colleges like this, and I'd like to put in a good word for them all. I finished that course of mine 2 weeks ago, and now I'm working out there at my war plant as a full-fledged engineer.
As far back as 1872 in Cleveland, the first YMCA for railroad men was opened. This is perhaps one of the association's lesser-known divisions. Yet today, more than 100,000 employees of 50 railroads in the United States and Canada are provided by the Y with much the same services as those offered by the more usual types of associations. Similar in many ways to the railroad Ys, are YMCAs offering services to other industrial workers in a score of fields. Round-the-clock Y doors are open to all. Antedating even the railroad Ys was the association's first work for and with the Negroes. Begun in 1853, it has today reached a point where 71 associations of their own, besides hundreds of other Ys, serve the colored people of America. Not only health, but talent too may be developed. In art classes and hobby clubs, even the youngest boys find their chance for self-expression. For years, the Y has pioneered in the fields of vocational counseling and job placement. Anticipating the post-war needs of veterans, such work is today being developed with even greater emphasis than before. Already, thousands of men demobilized from the armed forces have been helped. On the basis of interviews and tests designed to discover their natural abilities, these men are being directed into the occupations in which they are the most likely to succeed. For those who continue in the Army and Navy, there is the USO, with a record of service to soldiers and sailors which commenced in the war between the states. The YMCA is today one of 6 agencies responsible for the USO's total program. In 450 separate USO clubs and units, the association offers many an attraction. And in the Ys themselves, every night, servicemen by the thousand find lodging clean, cheap, and comfortable. In small towns and villages as well as in cities, the YMCA is an integral part of community life. And where no modern building is available for Y meetings, well, what's wrong with a local firehouse? A group of men and women listen to Russell Durgan, who has spent 20 years overseas helping develop the Y's World Service Program.
Now, see what the Y is doing in China, for instance. For 55 years, workers from North American Ys have pioneered the association in distant lands as a world service. The first secretary went to China in 1895. In peacetime there and later in war, it has helped millions. And today, hundreds of able Chinese secretaries, even under the terrific handicaps imposed by the war with Japan, are strengthening and expanding the movement among their own people. Their work for boys is as widespread as aid to the troops. For these youngsters are China's every hope and promise, not for winning the war, but the peace. Then there's South America. In Peru here, the Y has been working effectively for many years. This is Uruguay. Boys and the beautiful distant skyline of Montevideo. And in the city itself is a fine, modern Y. In weight, young man, you've got a lot to lose at the Y. Otherwise, the association offers you much to gain. In fine family summer camps like this, for instance. The Y in Rio. Here, the YMCA operates schools. And in Buenos Aires, capital of the Argentine, you find one of the largest and most beautiful Ys in the world. And so the work goes forward. In 8 countries of South and Central America, you will find the Y at work with the people. To the north, the port of Halifax in Canada, and soldiers gather for fun at the Y hostel. The same thing goes on in England, too, where in hundreds of canteens, British Ys aid servicemen. A YT car, serving volunteer firefighters of blitz-torn London. Traveling libraries, too, are a favorite Y service to British soldiers. Moving from post to post along the dusty English lanes, they carry thousands of volumes daily to Tommy Atkins. The Y is today doing its work of world service as one of many splendid organizations, like these, serving youth. For these are the boys who shall tomorrow inherit the earth. Let us all work together to make them strong in body and generous in thought and deed, so that the world of the future may be made by them a better world. Yes, young men, we do put our hopes in you. Of every race and creed and nation, your dream today is the ancient dream of humanity, the dream of true brotherhood among men. Let us work with good faith and strong hearts to make that dream become a living reality. God speed you, young men of tomorrow.